Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness. I'm Cherie Burton. As I always say, this is a podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are. Today, I've got Julie Schooler all the way from New Zealand, which is a country very close to my heart. I spent time as a quasi-Kiwi, I guess you could say, my family and I, about 4 years ago. I guess 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know, something like that. We lived there for 6 months, and I didn't meet Julie there, but she's reached out to me since as a listener on my podcast and asked if she could come share some cool tips about parenting in lockdown. So the name of this episode, 104, is Rebelliously Happy Parenting. She is an author, a mother of 2 young kids, and a happiness expert. So she's going to tell us how to get safety with that structure-freedom balance with children that sometimes is really difficult, and just some easy daily practices to connect with your kids. And I just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, being that it is airing the week of Christmas. I wish all of you the most beautiful holiday season ever, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Julie, Kiwi Julie, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness.
Kia ora, Cherie. How are you?
I'm great. And it's for those people who are already lost. Let me just tell you that Kiwi is a New Zealander and Kia ora is the greeting, sort of a hello greeting in Maori. And you found me, I don't even know. I didn't even ask you how you found me, but I love New Zealand. So I was delighted when you reached out with your specialty to share on this program. The fact that you are a New Zealander is fun.
I'm so glad I found you. I can't remember either, but and then when I reached out and you said you'd actually lived here, so that's really amazing.
Yes, and it's tied into kind of our topic, so we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. But you know, this whole thing that the world is experiencing with lockdown. Trying to navigate, for those of us who are parents, just trying to navigate, not only is it a difficult thing to manage our own energy and our own domain of our bodies and our own health and livelihood, but now we have these humans that rely on us for the same. And so we're having to navigate these new waters. Yes. What have you found? We'll just start right at the gate with this. Like, what have you found from your children? First let's talk about the challenges. Let's talk about the challenges with this, and let's just get as real as we can, because I know we have listeners who are like, don't sugarcoat it. I want to kill people. I know when the lockdown happened last March or whenever it was, when the kids came home from school, it was like the rug got ripped out. Because it just threw our lives into chaos. You know, the whole, you know, those of us who work from home or who aren't accustomed to homeschooling, and you have young children who rely on you now for their education or to lead you to those resources. It was really stressful. And then I know a lot of parents, I've talked to my brothers in California, and their kids came home from school and they're still not back in school. And they're doing everything online, which they lose so much.
Yeah.
So my kids are going to school, by the way, right now with masks on their face. What's happening in New Zealand? I talked to my friend Gail a lot about this, but she says that you're not having to mask up there because you've pretty much killed the virus over there in New Zealand.
We have our ups and downs. So yes, we went into lockdown in March, like most of the world. And it was a very, very strict 7, 8, about 2 months lockdown, where we were asked to stay in our local area. Online shopping was shut down. There was no restaurants. There was no takeaways. Some people had to learn to cook for the first time. And of course, schools were closed, and the kids were at home. They weren't allowed to play on the local playground. They weren't allowed to play with their friends. And so basically, it was just the 4 of us, my husband and me, and our 2 children who were 7 and 4 at the time, and had their birthdays during lockdown and turned 8 and 5. And I have to say, it was just a huge shock. Literally on the Monday, they were going to school, and that day they were told to go home and not come back for weeks on end. And we're one of the lucky ones, I have to say. Like, you know, they eventually got back to school, and we had a second unexpected lockdown where they were home again for 2 or 3 weeks. Now they're back at school again. So, and yes, we've got a bit more of a handle on the pandemic here, but that's not to say that it's going to flare up again. So I think people are on alert, you know, on that flight or flight thing the whole time, and that's not easy to deal with.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think let's start there, because let's talk about some of the challenges with respect to parenting that are a result of the uncertainty right now. And you mentioned fight or flight. It's almost like you're bracing yourself, right?
Yes. And there's that kind of tension that you have, that you're feeling that, but you don't want your children to feel this, right? As much as possible. Of course, they're going to take on some of the stress, but it's about how do we make a sort of a structured, comforting environment for our kids while we're going through a pandemic, and so people can do it in different ways. But the way I did it during lockdown is our first lockdown was just having not a really strict one, but a daily structure, which the kids seemed to thrive on. You know, like they knew what time they were expected to get up. Well, they always get up at 6 o'clock anyway, but they knew what time they were expected to have breakfast, get dressed and everything. And then, I'll play on my last name, Schooler. So they had Schooler school in the morning, but you know, they knew there was going to be a break in the middle of the lessons, and then we had more activities in the afternoon, and they could look forward to a bike ride or a walk. That was pretty much it. Or a board game if it was raining, kind of thing, and then they got a little bit of screen time when I was cooking dinner. So not everyone gets that kind of luxury, because people are working, you know, having to work as well, but we kind of managed to make it work.
So it's about creating structure. It's about getting out of a stress response and into more of a flow with that structure, right? One of the things that I think is brilliant about children is they are so resilient. They may be locking trauma in, right? And we may not know, you know, the repercussions for years down the road, but they have this uncanny ability to be able to, because I think they are so trusting. They're not bracing themselves in the way the adults are bracing themselves. It's a different level of just, it's open, trusting. Okay, well, I guess we do have to wear a mask to school. Oh, okay, you know, not to say they're not feisty, but by and large, they are very open and trusting and accepting.
Yes, and you know, they haven't had. This is like they're normal. Like they're only young, right? So this is just a new normal for them, and it's grown-ups who don't like change. Kids can cope with change. They are very resilient and very good. Actually, honestly, I just think they're having a ball. You know, when we had lockdown and they had mummy and daddy home, and they're able to go bike riding every day. You know, my main goal was to make them feel safe, and my second main goal was to, when they were growing up, for them to look back on that lockdown time and think that it was one of the best times of their life. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we had some flare-ups, like, believe me, like, you know, just living on top of each other the whole time, you know, it was hard. And, but I'm hoping that overall they'll look back and go, wow, that was a really cool time.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that there's a coming together of families in the bottom. Would not surprise me a bit, given the rates of COVID in the U.S., if there is another lockdown. And I honestly am all the wiser for it this time, of what to do, what not to do. When you talked about creating safety, definitely the structure is part of that, right? Creating an environment and the structure in the environment. It feels also like, and I know you talk a lot about this because you're the author of 9 books. You have 2 little children. You have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Children teach us a lot, and they heal a lot and express themselves through creativity. That's kind of what they're teaching us, I guess. So anyway, I'm just curious about that link that you see with children creativity, but also like with motherhood and creativity, having children. and how that lends us to be creators on all levels.
Well, yes, two parts. So, kids and creativity. One thing I want to address is what I did with the school was just try to make it as less stress as possible. I wasn't going to, I was going to take some of the lesson plans, but I wasn't going to try and replicate exactly what the teachers did, because I'm not a teacher, and I didn't know. I wasn't going to teach on the level, like at the same level that they were. So, just trying to be as less. I got creative with my teaching. Like I decided to teach my children things that they might not learn at school. Like we learned some geography in capital cities, and we learned about what a virus is and things like that. So, so that's just one side of creativity. But my kids teach me everything about creativity. They just embrace creativity every day, their imagination. Like, they don't need to learn anything from me from creativity. I actually think all my creativity came from having children. I feel like it brought back my creativity. Mm-hmm. I had a child, and then suddenly I was writing again, and I hadn't written anything for 20 years. So I owe everything to my children. I owe all my creativity to having children. Now, I really wish that I'd embraced my creativity before having children, because I feel like I would have had a bit more time. But I don't think it would have happened like that. And my first blog post was about not being able to sleep with a newborn baby. So it went from there.
Yeah. So with, knowing that there are a lot of women who haven't been able to either start or complete a family for whatever reason, or maybe it's just not on their radar at all to become a mother, or, it's just not their life goal for whatever. I meet women all of the time who were kind of taught that their livelihood or their sovereignty or their worth even was attached to having children. When they really got clear and really breathed into who they were and are, they felt like, no, that was what was told I needed to do to complete me as a person. But I really don't have that mothering gene, is what some of them said. I don't really have that mothering instinct. I don't really have the desire to have children. I find that really interesting. I actually, I have dear friends and one sister who never had children, and they're super creative and super resourceful. So I just want to say, like, it can enhance your creativity to have children, but it can also block it. Yeah. Because you don't have the same space of creation that you did before they happened on the scene. So the paradox is you can live with all of this desire, like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I want to create, and I have all these ideas, because you just had a human and your body's in creative mode and activated that way. But then you have to scale it back, because you have to take care of these children. But you're now in charge of these children. So it's a bit paradoxical.
And you're so tired all the time.
Yes, you can't implement all the ideas and all the stuff that you want to do.
It took me a couple of years to realize just the connection, just for me, of like, oh, I created life, and then my creativity came back. And so, of course, that's not going to happen for everybody. But
even adopting children, because my last two children are adopted, I noticed the same phenomenon.
That's really interesting.
Though I did not give birth to them, I felt like I went through labor and stress and pain, and metaphorically speaking, I gave birth to them on some level to bring them into our home. And I noticed that, I don't know, I go through this boom after I have a child, whether I've adopted them or given birth to them biologically, where I want to create something for them, whether it's, that nesting that you experience. Sometimes it happens in pregnancy, sometimes it happens after you give birth, but I just like, where do I funnel my creativity? What can I make? Oh, maybe I can make a scrapbook, or maybe I can start to decorate their room or whatever. It's just this flux of wanting to express and wanting to beautify or make things cozier or something aesthetically appealing. Like, I don't know. That's just me though. I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely felt that very real, very, very real energy coming through me.
Yes, I think there's definitely a connection there. Yes.
So a couple things. And we kind of alluded to this a little bit when you and I were talking before. Maybe we mentioned it on this when we started recording. I don't remember. But both you and I have suffered through a miscarriage. And I think it ties into what we were just talking about, because I learned this from my OB. I had 4 miscarriages in a row trying to bring these last 2 children into the home, who eventually came through 2 separate private adoptions. But
Goodness.
He told me after the 4th miscarriage, he said, when you have a miscarriage, it's the same level of hormone crash as if you gave birth, the same release of hormone, the same everything. Only you don't have a baby, you have an empty cradle, so to speak. And so he was always about supporting me hormonally, but no one had ever, that's not something widely known. I don't think we're very open about miscarriage and the repercussions emotionally and physically, but you blogged about it. So did I, but I'm curious why you felt to blog about it, whereas some people maybe would just keep it to themselves or private, or just share with a couple close loved ones.
I did not know that, but the hormones, so that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to blog about it. I just needed a cathartic release, and I had a very early, it was only a few weeks, early miscarriage. Physically, it didn't take a toll, but emotionally, it took a toll. And I meant to keep it private because that's what you do, you know, in this culture. And then I just started writing, and I realized that we'd only told like our parents that was about it. And then I just pressed publish on this blog, and it exploded. Like, I had no idea. And like almost every single woman in my life had told me it came up, told me through text or email or phoned me or something, and told me a similar miscarriage or a loss of baby story. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Yeah.
And just the love and the support I got afterwards was quite incredible. I had a friend just leave me a whole shoebox of chocolates just in my letterbox. She didn't even come in or knock on the door or anything. She just left a box of chocolates in my letterbox.
It's such a unique loss. And I agree. I had people coming out of the woodwork as well, who were very open with me after I blogged about it, and this was years ago. It was like, thank you for giving voice to validate that this was a real person, that this was not just a cluster of cells, that there was a soul attached to this pregnancy. And I don't know about you, I haven't read your blog post, but I felt that with each of those losses. I felt the ushering in and the exiting of a soul.
I don't know. I don't think I'm that spiritual. For me, I felt like it was a loss of future plan, like future, you know, like the planning, the expectation, you kind of count forward to the birth date. Oh, that's not going to happen. That a little brother or sister because I had a child and we were trying for our second child. And yeah, I think once I actually wrote the blog post, what I realized is I just wanted people to have an open conversation about it without feeling that, you know, like they just needed it to be a secret. And I just, and that any kind of emotion or anything you're feeling is absolutely okay. You can feel angry, you can feel sad, you can feel like it was a loss of a soul or a loss of a future, or, you know, whatever you're feeling is the right feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think grief it's so subjective, and everyone grieves so personally, and it's very sacred to their own station and set of beliefs and whatnot. I think it just, for me as a teacher, and for me, the whole lesson with motherhood to this date, I guess I just had to learn it the hard way, because the universe is like, okay, I'm just going to give you like 10 souls to deal with. 5 of them you get to raise, 5 you're going to lose.
Goodness.
And it's taught me the value of waiting on God. I really, as much as I see myself as a limitless creator, I am not the creator, and I am not in charge of whether a soul incarnates through me or not. I'm not in charge of that. Like, I can have a degree of faith, and I can have a degree of, you know, how the body works and how to keep myself healthy and do everything that I can on this end. But ultimately, every soul has sovereignty, and they choose when they come and when they go. I've just had to learn that, and waiting, 7 years for Eli and Emma, having known they were coming, and then having to wait 7 years and trying to give birth to them, and not surrendering to that process of letting them come how they wanted to come. As I look at, the loss, every time that there was a loss, I would go into this, woe is me, and why me? And I'm just trying to be a good person. I just want to bring children on the earth. I'm a good mom, I'm a good person. Why is the universe torturing me like this? And what it came down to is, this isn't about me. It is, because it's teaching me. But ultimately, I'm not in charge of these children who come to me. It's not a chess game where I'm like trying to move the pieces around. I'm just a vessel. So it was like the larger lesson or analogy or metaphor or whatever for that is like, that's how my whole life plays out too.
Yes. Well, yes, motherhood's a good, subset of life, isn't it? Life is about not knowing anything and just carrying on anyway, right?
Yeah, and the minute we think we can control these little humans is the minute we get humbled.
Yes, exactly. Every time. Motherhood is about chaos and learning to be patient, really.
So true.
Yeah.
So what have you found has been the most helpful thing for you as you're, navigating these new waters with children? It's anything innovative that you could share with us about what you've learned about anything about homeschooling or just the happiness factor with your children?
Anything I've learned,
I think anything that you're doing practically that is, that would help us.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're very lucky here. We're not locked down. It's people are, having different levels of stress around the world. So but I think the basics really help. Having a gratitude practice every day, and I know you talk about this. I thank my bed every morning. We say thank you around the dinner table every evening when we're home together, and I ask the kids each night what 2 questions, which is what are you grateful for and what are you happy about, and they just go along with it because it's just kind of normal to them, but it's just always kind of what I call being rebelliously happy, just trying to turn my mind to the positive, and I'm quite. I can easily wallow, and I can easily worry, and I can easily be as negative as the next person. But so I try to do everything I can to look on the bright side on anything. For example, this year, I don't know, it's not skiting or anything, just because of the hand washing and because of the social distancing, our family's actually been more well than we have in previous
same
years.
with us.
So, I keep going, not good goodness, we haven't, we barely had a cold all winter, we just had winter here. And that's just strange with 2 young kids. This hand washing thing really seems to work. So really, honestly, it's just back to the basics stuff for me. Just trying to have as much routine as possible within the chaos, and having some gratitude and positive thinking practices, simple stuff, deep breathing, all that kind of stuff.
And then teaching your children the art of deep breathing. That's something that we really try. They get mad, like, don't tell me to breathe. But then it's sinking in. I know it is, because I see them do it on their own when they don't know that I'm watching. Yes.
I try to be present, and, as a grown up, you have to, I kind of meditate every morning, and I actively try to be present, but then my kids are naturally present. And so I really learn from them. Right. We had an incident the other day, and Eloise cried. She was upset about something, and she cried for a bit. And then about 10 minutes later, I said, how are you feeling now? And she was like, I'm great. I'm eating a tomato and I'm watching TV. And she was great, because she'd had her emotion and she'd released it, and now she was being present with eating her tomatoes, her little cherry tomatoes. And I was like, oh my goodness, I really need to take this lesson in because I was still stewing on it, right?
Yeah. She'd already let it go.
Yes.
Because she's not, yeah, exactly. They're not in the past. They're not in the future. They're just in the now. Mm. And I watch like all the pets we've ever had, dogs, they're the same way. It's like that is the true thing that they're coming to teach us, is how to stay aligned in the present. I've talked about this on other episodes, but, because I did have to, I have these 3 college kids and then, these 2, this 8 and the 6-year-old. And, so there's 12-year gap between kid 3 and kid 4. And what's interesting is that, like I said, like I have learned so many lessons about myself just by trying to navigate motherhood, but I was more patient with the first set of kids by far. And I'm like, I think it's just because I had over this whole decade plus 2 years of just getting triggered, having my emotions arise, like dealing with my past trauma, all these things that trigger me now, and then wanting more space to create, because most women my age, I'm going to be turning 52 at the beginning of January. Wow. And most women my age, either they're nearing empty nesterhood or they've got much older children that are kind of self-sustaining. And I found myself going into space of resistance about that. And then I keep getting reminded, like when I meditate or whatever, it's like, you wanted these children, you manifest them, you brought them here. And that's true. But also what I had prayed for before they arrived was to really understand this concept of, how do I access love and power for myself and others? And it's like, all you really have to do is watch these 2 children. They're your teachers. They're your spiritual masters. They know how to do this naturally. And you used to also when you were a child. I'm like, oh, okay, but I just want to create. No, just watch them and just learn. I wish I was better at it, but I'm just saying I used to be a lot more patient. Aren't you supposed to get better with like more conscious as you get older? I don't know.
I think you're beating yourself up a bit. I think
I probably am.
You just can't think about, oh, where are other people, and I should be at this spot, and my kids should be here or whatever. Like, again, it's just being present. I think this pandemic, more than anything else, it hasn't given us what we want. It's given us what we need.
True.
Just to slow down, to be with our families, and just to take a good look at our life and be present and think about what we really want.
Mm-hmm. So well said. Well, okay. So this whole concept of being rebelliously happy as a parent, flying in the face of like seeing motherhood as drudgery or menial tasks, it comes to me back to, it's the menial tasks that keep us present. Mm-hmm. It's when we're in our head too much, but when we come back that we get into anxiety or depression. But when we're in the moment, accessing our power, accessing simplicity, it's very pure and innocent, like a child. It's like still point creation.
Mm-hmm. So you tell people, like, feel your emotions, and it's okay to feel sad and stressed and all that. Because telling people to be rebelliously happy does cause people to like put their arms up and go, what are you talking about? How can we be? But how can we not be? We just can't be present and feel bad the entire time. What is the point of that? Like, yes. So every day it's harder to be happy than to not be happy, but we must try.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been really great. And it's caused me to come back into, just this place of simple presence, where everything resides really on the breath, on that openness, curiosity, all those childlike qualities. It's just a beautiful reminder. And I told you this before, and I have one of my best friends, Gail, that lives in New Zealand. I always tell her, like, as soon as New Zealand opens up, I'm like on the first plane over. Typically, you've been going there every year. So this would be a good time to talk about why I live there, because we kind of left everybody hanging that we said we'd get to that. You live in Auckland, which is kind of more in the north. North,
the main city, the biggest city, yes,
biggest city, capital, right?
It's not the capital, but it's the biggest city.
Okay,
yes. The capital is Wellington, which is south.
Oh, so is Wellington the capital? Okay.
Yeah.
I love Wellington too. But anyway, so
yes, so do I.
The whole reason I was in Mother New Zealand is because of kind of a parenting crisis in our family, just kind of a fracture. We went through a season when we were trying to bring Emma into our family, our youngest, we got her through the foster system, and she was born in California, and I had to get a 1-bedroom apartment and live there for what was supposed to be 5 weeks and ended up being 5 months. And I was separated from the other 4 children, including a 2-year-old. And so I could only come home on a court order. It was so crazy to just cross state lines. But by the time that whole ordeal was over and her adoption was final, we decided we needed a family experience to just kind of regroup, have some business associations in Australia. And we thought, well, we could go out there, but it just felt like we need to go to New Zealand, and it didn't make any sense at all. But it's so beautiful there. And we actually went to Bay of Plenty, which such an abundant name, that land healed us. And the people and the associations there and the bounty of the earth. And it's like my second home. Yeah. All the loss culminated, after the 5 miscarriages and then the waiting and then the having to be away from my children and all of this. And it was just like years and years and years of trying to complete our family, culminating in this kind of traumatic experience with bringing Emma. We were like, time out.
Oh my goodness.
We need to. So it was.
What a change. Like, that's just unbelievable.
So next time I'm in New Zealand, I will look you up.
Yes. I'll show you around. I'll show you a couple of secret spots you might not have ventured to last time.
Oh, that would be great. So can you share with our listeners, Julie, how they can find you? And I know you have an offering for them as well.
Yes, so just come and look for me on all the socials. It's Julie Schooler, like school with an ER, and my website's julieschooler.com, and my ebook, Rediscover Your Sparkle, is currently free everywhere. So look for it on all good online stores.
Great. Well, thank you, Julie. This was fun.
Oh, this was excellent. Thank you, Cherie.
For all of you guys parenting in times of COVID, hey, I'm with you. Solidarity. I mean, it's not easy. This whole thing about being rebelliously happy is kind of cool to me. Like we get triggered by happy people. It's like, well, who does she or he think that they are? They can be that happy. Especially when it comes to parenting and being a joyful mother or a joyful father of children, which has always been kind of a life goal of mine. I tend to be more serious minded. So this was fun to kind of have this lighthearted discussion with Julie. You can find more about her on julieschooler.com. Have a glorious holiday season. And remember, the pandemic hasn't given us what we want. It's given us what we need.